we asked Richard Allis, that is chairing or working on the Restore Springfield project, which absolutely connects the north side and how we can, improve, make those little small steps that over time it makes our community better. Richard is a lifelong resident of Springfield. His family has been involved on the north side since 1885. Now, of course, Richard hasn't been here that whole time, but his great-grandfather started the company, and on Commercial Street, and they were on Commercial Street until 1979. Richard grew up in Midtown and attended Boyd, Pipkin, and Central, and then after serving in the Navy, he attended what is now SMSU at the time. He's been in the insurance business for over 30 years and has served the city this past 4 years on City Council. Please welcome Richard Allis. Thank you.
Thanks so much, and it's a pleasure to be with you to talk about what we believe is an exciting project with Restore SGF. And just to kind of give you some insight into this, we are really, although this has been, as Brent said, cooking for quite some time, we're really just beginning this effort. And so this is really today to let you know a little bit about it, get your input, because this will continue to evolve as we move forward. Let me kind of set the stage. We've had 2 decades of growth in this area, in this region, and predominantly in Springfield, it has been mixed use growth, use growth. Whether it be the downtown area, up on C Street, we've had lots of multifamily being developed, obviously around campus and other areas. And so Springfield has grown, but again, it's predominantly been in mixed use. However, our bedroom communities, whether it be Nixa, Ozark, now Republic, right, Rogersville, they have been growing households. We have seen significant growth. In fact, it's double the growth of Springfield proper. And it's predominantly driven by a couple of things which I'll talk about here in a second. Yeah, in fact, I listed it here, but I'm going to get into some stats. 20 years ago, you used to be able to buy a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in these bedroom communities very affordably, right? And they were building new schools, and this was very desirable for young families. And so we saw a lot of young families either locate or relocate outside in these bedroom communities with new schools, affordable housing. You used to be able to buy a home out in these areas, again, relatively new, $80,000 to $90,000. You could get into this a couple of decades ago. Springfield, on the other hand, although we were growing, we really didn't see that significant growth as far as residential households. And also, as you can see, we're somewhat landlocked. And so really we don't have a lot of greenfield development happening in our community. We've also seen, as many of you know, and again, I grew up in Midtown. I'm very, very familiar with the north side of town in particular, but we've seen some deterioration, to put it mildly, in some of our housing stock over in these areas. And we have really, frankly, suffered as far as, now, not in every area, but in a lot of areas, we've seen this type of housing. We're plagued with nuisance housing violations in the city and dangerous buildings. And I won't get into all that today, but I will just say there's a lot of room for improvement in these areas as far as housing goes. Now this is what I call the money slide. And I do want to spend just a little bit of time on this slide. You know, again, Remember when I told you about the bedroom communities a couple decades ago? You know, buy a $85,000 relatively new house. That economic model's changed. If you go out to Nixa, Ozark, Republic, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house now is anywhere from $180,000 to $225,000. And so certainly the costs of those homes in those bedroom communities and costs in general have changed. If you look at some of our historic neighborhoods, you can buy a home over in some of those neighborhoods for anywhere from $40,000 to $80,000. Now, in many cases, it does need significant work and updating that needs to occur in that house. But in this example, you put 40 to 60 in it, and you have really an updated home in a established, mature neighborhood for $80,000 to $140,000. So again, that's flipped. The economics of living in these areas have flipped. But here's the exciting thing, and this is what we get excited about as we look out into the future. We have a lot of things that are happening and have already been put in motion to change the environment and, frankly, our community for the positive as we move forward. I'll start with the build grant. We were recently awarded a federal build grant, $26 million, where we will build a corridor from Bass Pro to downtown. That will go right through several neighborhoods associated with Bass Knight Park, right, West Central, and those neighborhoods there. It's not just going to be a tree-lined street with public art, bike paths, etc. That is going to be an economic corridor where we will see the dynamics change for neighborhoods in and around that corridor. Ozark Greenways continues to develop their trail network, and we see many people wanting to locate and build and renovate along the Greenway trails. Our historic business districts continue to grow and expand with C Street, downtown, Pickwick and Roundtree area, right? And the Art Museum is getting ready to move forward on their master plan. In fact, the 15th will begin work down at the Art Museum in Phelps Grove Park. And of course, Galloway continues to grow and develop too. Here's what we really are excited about, particularly as it relates to the north side. Springfield Public Schools, as you know, recently passed a significant issue. We're going to spend $170 million in our public schools, renovating and building new schools, many of those on the north side of our community. We think that's a big deal. Something a lot of us don't really talk about, but is currently happening right now, is all of us are going to be hooked up to high-speed fiber network. City Utilities is investing $120 million, where every house and or business in our community will have the ability to hook up to high-speed internet and other services at their residence. We think that's a big deal. So as you can tell, this situation, the timing, the economics have changed, and we feel what I'm about to share with you really has potential to take off. Restore SGF, and again, we're just getting started. This is not a canned or developed program. We are developing it as we go, and I'm asking you to help us develop it. So I'd appreciate your input and questions. We really want to do two things. We want to encourage home ownership, and we want to enhance housing stock. And I will tell you, we just got a report. Over 50% of the houses in Springfield, Missouri are now rentals. Now listen to that for a second. Over 50% of houses in Springfield, Missouri are now rentals. Now, I am no expert in housing like Brent is. However, I do know that you can't build a community solely on rental property. So we have to stem that tide. So what are we doing? And you'll see this. We want to provide a central resource for all residential programs, a one-stop shop, so to speak. We want to more effectively market those residential programs, and we need help. We need the banking community, the realty community, right, and many others to be with us in this effort. We want to stimulate the creation of incentives to both live and invest in these areas, and we want to provide resources so that we can reduce the barriers to home ownership. This is one of our pilot areas, and again, we're just getting started, but think about the potential here. And this is really near and dear to my heart because I went to Boyd School. This is the new Boyd School, right? The corner there at division between National and Benton. And you think about where it's located. It's close to Cox, it's close to Drury, it's close to Commercial Street. Think about if you're a young family and you've got a brand spanking new elementary school close to all those amenities where you can live, work, and raise a family. We think this could be and is a very desirable area to live. And by the way, I just happen to live a couple of blocks from this where I grew up. And so anyway, an investment over $20 million in this neighborhood. Here's where the build grant is happening. Again, from Bass Pro Shops all the way down Grant Street into our downtown area. And you can see that abuts on several residential areas, whether it be the Fast Night area, West Central, and all of that corridor. This is going to be a bellwether project for our community. In fact, at council, we're going to hear more about it this month, and they've already worked with consultants and the community helping develop this plan. Obviously, Commercial Street, and again, another area very near and dear to my. As a side note, my great-grandfather developed what is now the Missouri Hotel, and had it built. It was the Green Tavern Inn at that time. And we're not, obviously, I'm not in the hotel business. There's a reason for that. I'm in the insurance business. He built it in 1930. And so his timing was not exactly stellar as far as developing a hotel over on Commercial Street. But Commercial Street, we think, has great potential, and Woodland Heights and all the areas around Commercial Street. We also think that our tree canopy and our mature neighborhoods are really attractive. Now, they need a little bit of work. There's no question about that. But think about if you do a greenfield development out in one of our bedroom communities or even further out, many times they're in a field with no trees, no infrastructure. We have all of that ready-made right here in Springfield. This is a map of low to moderate income areas, and this is important in that and Brad is sitting right there. This is important because banks are very willing and able and actually desire to invest in these areas. And so I'm going to tell you about some programs here that we've just kind of uncovered, and more are being developed that we've also uncovered. But all of these are eligible for special financing, low income types of housing, types of incentives, as well as market rate investment. Yes?
What is the boundary of that area?
You know, this is just basically Springfield, and as you can see, this is Sunshine, this is Grand, and you can really see that anything north of...
How far north does that go?
It goes all the way to Norton Road.
Oh, okay.
So this is a big, big area, and all of this area is eligible for special financing and special incentives. Thank you for that clarification.
You mean every area on that map that you just showed? There were no, that,
I mean, there are certain pockets that aren't, that you can see this white area here that is not low to moderate, but I'll mention this. In every corner, every area of our city, there are low and moderate income areas that qualify for this. Yeah. Although it's not just a North Side project, certainly this is dedicated to the North Side. We've been on the road, and COVID has kind of slowed us down a little bit, but we've met with developers and contractors. We've met with the Neighborhood Advisory Committee, financial institutions, realtors. We met with Rotary North, obviously North Side Betterment. So we're getting out and communicating this message in hopes that you'll help us as we start down this path in earnest. This was actually a presentation that we had some help with, and Debbie Hart was nice enough to demonstrate, or I guess have an example of what Broken Arrow, Oklahoma has done in their historic areas. And they have done great work. That's a picture of a home that's been completely restored in one of their historic areas that was deteriorating. And so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, we have other models that we can latch on to. I might say this, and sometimes this is a little controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. Zoning is always an issue. But I will say that as we move into the future, we can't just look at third of an acre lots with single family homes. We're going to have to look at inventive types of things like pocket neighborhoods and multifamily, multi-use types of situations. Now it needs to fit in the neighborhood, and it needs to be appropriate, but we are going to have to look at our zoning as we move into the future. This is not an exhaustive list, but this is what really excited me. As we started talking to the financial institutions, we started learning that they already have programs that fit these areas that are ready-made for both low-income and market rate types of financing. No down payment, low down payment, no PMI. And for our bankers in the room and our realtors in the room, you know what I'm talking about. What I'm saying is that there is all kinds of financing out there that's currently available, and there will be new financing of vehicles that will become available so that we can implement some of these strategies. We had Jeff Kester speak to us. And Jeff, as we all know, there's a housing shortage that's available for realtors to sell and people to buy. And so again, if we can renovate some of these homes and develop some of these areas, it will increase our inventory and make it available to people that are ready to buy. Now here's what we heard. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more, right? This is a listening tour. Is we heard, hey, one of the issues is crime. And we do have a crime issue in our community. One of the things we heard is that the contractors that are going out there to redevelop these homes, they put their tools in the home and they come back the next day and the tools are stolen, right? That it's an issue as far as people saying, hey, I'm not sure that I want to live over there because I've heard that the crime is bad over there. And so we realize that this is an issue that we're going to have to work at and work through, right? So it's an issue that not only do we know about, but we know we've got to have some better solutions for. Nuisance properties. We are plagued by nuisance properties, whether it be trash, weeds, stuff, growing up all over the place, windows broken out. I could go on and on with the list, but we've got to get a better handle on nuisance properties. Appraisals. They can be an issue too. You can't put too much money in some of these homes because they won't appraise. And then you've got a financing issue. So again, another issue we've identified. I do want to say there's significant interest in financing from banks. There is a desire for larger scale projects. In other words, although it will help to do this 1 and 2 at a time, where we'll really make some progress is if we may be able to go in and redevelop a block or redevelop a couple of blocks. And that's where we can really get the momentum going. I mentioned realtors need more inventory, and then we need to update our zoning and building codes to make it easier and more desirable to work and develop and renovate in these areas. Frankly, sometimes we get in our own way. So I'm not going to go through all of this because I talked about crime and nuisance properties, but just know that we are working on this. We don't have the silver bullet, but we are working to try to find inventive solutions and try to work with neighborhoods and others so that we can put a plan in place to try to address some of these issues. Again, think of this initially as a one-stop shop where people can go if they're interested in this effort to get financing, to participate in development, to find a good contractor, to look at incentives that may be available in these neighborhoods and other things, this one-stop shop. I will say that right now we have this under the city umbrella. That hopefully is soon to move out next year into what's called a Community Development Corporation. We are in the process of trying to form a Community Development Corporation. What that allows us to do is it allows us to go out and get federal money, grants, and other things that we can't do if we just leave it under the umbrella at the city. And so that our ultimate goal is to create, again, Community Development Corporation that will have the ability to do lots of things. So again, as I wrap up here, before I take your questions, hopefully you have some or some input, we want to encourage home ownership. We want to invest in our housing stock. We cannot solve this problem by running out and fining people for nuisance properties, right? Now, I'm not saying we don't need to do that, but we've got to have capital investment in neighborhoods if we truly are going to improve our neighborhoods and our housing stock. And it also creates civic pride. I now don't live in Midtown. I live over in the Roundtree area. There is a lot of pride in that neighborhood. Lots of work has been done. Our little business district up there, in fact, I walked up there the other night, it is popping, right? And there are lots of positive things. That can and should happen in other areas of our community, and we're going to try our best to see if we can make that happen. So how can you help? Help us identify both neighborhoods and areas that we can deploy these resources to. Volunteer to be part of this work and part of this effort and help us form this Community Development Corporation. And then connect with potential homeowners and developers and promote the area. You know, we have a couple realtors that are really doing a nice job at I say a couple, several, maybe a dozen, promoting this and these areas of our community. And then lastly, here's how you can connect with us. RestoreSGF.com. I'd encourage you to get on that website. There's lots of material. We're developing it. Again, we're just starting this effort, but lots of information there. Or you can call our city line 864-1695. It's in our planning and development department there now before we move it out in the Community Development Corporation.